Welcome, friends, to another quiet night of stories. Tonight, we drift softly into the world of Demon Slayer, a place where courage glows gently against the dark and every breath carries hope. This is 150 Demon Slayer facts to fall asleep, to told slowly and calmly, like a lullaby for the heart. As you listen, imagine the whisper of wind through pine trees, the warmth of a lantern flickering in the dark. These are stories of Tanjiro and Nezuko, of friendship, loss, and the strength to keep moving forward. Each fact is a small light, a memory, a secret, a quiet truth from their world. So breathe deeply, let your thoughts soften, and allow the calm to settle in. If you enjoy these bedtime journeys, please subscribe and tell me where you're listening from tonight. Now, rest easy. Our story begins beneath the gentle glow of the moon, in the quiet mist of the mountains, where pine trees breathe the cool air of dusk and rivers whisper softly over stones. There lies the world of Demon Slayer. It is a place where the old and the sacred still linger, where torii gates stand among forests, and the scent of incense drifts through small villages. The story begins not with the clash of swords or the roar of battle, but with the simple rhythm of life, families gathering around warm fires, merchants traveling the winding roads, and the faint hum of a world still lit by lanterns instead of electricity. This is a world balanced between beauty and danger. By day, it glows with calm simplicity, fields of rice glistening under morning sun, the sound of distant laughter echoing through wooden homes. But when night falls, the air thickens with unease, the roads grow quiet, the woods seem to breathe differently. People lock their doors early, whispering prayers under their breath, for they know that when darkness deepens, demons walk among them. These demons are not mere beasts. They are born from human suffering, from jealousy, anger, fear, and despair. Once human, they are transformed by Muzan Kibutsuji, the first of their kind, into creatures that hunger endlessly for blood. They move through the night unseen, faster than any man, stronger than any beast, yet haunted by fragments of what they once were. In the world of Demon Slayer, evil is rarely simple. It often wears the face of tragedy. The humans who stand against this darkness are few. They are known as the Demon Slayer Corps, an organization that has existed for centuries, hidden in the shadows, dedicated to eradicating demons wherever they appear. They are not soldiers or priests, but wanderers bound by oath and purpose. They travel alone or in small groups, guided by intuition and training. Their only companions, the swords they carry, and the memories of those they could not save. Every demon slayer wields a special weapon called a Nichiren blade. Forged from rare ores that have absorbed sunlight for years, these swords are one of the few things capable of killing demons. When a slayer first draws their blade, it changes color to reflect their nature and fighting style, a deep crimson for flame, a soft blue for water, a bright yellow for thunder. Each color hums with personality, a reflection of the heart that holds it. But strength in this world is not measured only by skill. The slayers are trained in breathing styles, ancient techniques that channel life itself into power. Through the control of breath, a person can push beyond their limits, moving faster, striking harder, and sensing the flow of battle like the tide of an ocean. Each breathing style is inspired by nature, the still grace of water, the heat of fire, the speed of lightning, the calm of the wind. When a slayer fights, it is not chaos but art, a dance between death and life, each motion flowing with purpose and grace. The world they protect is fragile. Japan, in the Taisho era, is changing. Steam trains puff through the mountains. Western clothing mingles with traditional robes, and the sound of progress hums faintly through the countryside. Yet, despite these changes, the demons remain, hiding in forgotten corners, preying on travelers, slipping through shadows that progress cannot reach. In this in-between age, the old world has not yet vanished, and the new world is not yet strong enough to protect itself. It is here, in this twilight, that the story unfolds. The beauty of Demon Slayer's world lies not only in its danger, but in its balance. For every demon lurking in the dark, there is the warmth of a family's love. For every loss, there is kindness, a reminder that humanity endures even in the face of despair. The Slayers do not fight merely to kill. They fight to preserve this quiet beauty, the laughter of children, the peace of a home, the stillness of a morning untouched by fear. In every village, there are rumors of a man with eyes like moonlight, of a woman who walks at dawn, though no one remembers her face. People speak of ghostly figures and unearthly battles, never certain if they are dreams or truth. The world of Demon Slayer exists in this uncertainty, where myth and life weave together so seamlessly that one cannot tell where one ends and the other begins. At the heart of it all is compassion. The demons, for all their cruelty, are rarely born evil. Most were once human, driven to transformation by pain, hunger, or despair. When a slayer faces them, it is not always with hatred but with sorrow. Many die with tears in their eyes, remembering the families they once loved, the lives they once lived. In these final moments, even the most fearsome creature becomes a person again, and the blade that ends their life becomes an act of mercy. This quiet tragedy gives the world of Demon Slayer its depth. It is not a story of endless battle, but of cycles, life and death, love and loss, sunrise and sunset. Each fight is not simply about victory, but about meaning. Why do we protect? Why do we endure? The answers shift like mist through the mountains, but they always lead back to the same truth, that even in a world filled with darkness, the smallest light can hold everything together. And so the story begins in stillness, in a small village on a snowy mountain, where a boy named Tanjiro Kamado carries firewood down a narrow path. His family waits for him at home, unaware of what fate has already begun to stir. Above them, the sky glows softly, the last light of day fading into blue. Somewhere, far away, a crow calls, and in the distance the forest begins to whisper the first notes of a story that will echo through generations. The world breathes deep, ancient, patient. It does not rush. The wind carries the scent of pine and ash. The snow drifts quietly through the air, and the night descends like a curtain drawn gently over the stage. In this world of twilight, where humans and demons walk the same earth, every heartbeat becomes a promise to protect, to endure, to remember. This is the beginning of Demon Slayer, a tale not only of blades and blood, but of humanity itself. It is a story of fragile strength and endless compassion, told softly beneath the stars. And as the night deepens and the firelight flickers, you can almost hear the steady rhythm of breath, the same breath that guides the Slayers, the same that carries life forward, even in the darkest of nights. High in the mountains, beneath a canopy of snow-covered trees, there once lived a humble family who carried warmth in their hearts brighter than any fire. The Kamado family was simple, but not poor in spirit. Their days were filled with quiet work and laughter, their nights wrapped in the soft glow of a flickering hearth. They lived in rhythm with the land, cutting firewood, selling charcoal in nearby towns, and cherishing one another with a love that seemed untouched by the harshness of the world beyond. Tanjiro Kamado, the eldest son, was the kind of boy who greeted each dawn with gratitude. His strength was not born from ambition or pride, but from kindness, a steady flame that never flickered no matter how hard the wind blew. Every morning he would rise before the sun, his breath turning to mist in the cold air, and carry bundles of wood down the mountain path to sell in town. His family depended on him, and he never once complained. He smiled through fatigue, through frost and distance, because love gave him purpose. At home waited his mother, gentle and patient, her hands always busy with cooking or mending. His younger brothers and sisters, full of laughter and curiosity, followed her like little sparrows. And there was Nezuko, the eldest daughter after Tanjiro, cheerful, kind, and full of quiet strength. She helped care for the younger children, her laughter a melody that filled their small home. Together, they were not just a family, but a circle of warmth in a cold and uncertain world. Life for the Kamado family was simple but sacred. The world outside their mountain was full of rumors of demons that roamed the woods, of disappearances after dark, yet their home felt safe, as though love itself formed a barrier stronger than any wall. Tanjiro heard the stories, of course, whispered by travelers and neighbors, but he always believed that as long as they stayed close, they would be all right. The forest was their home, and they respected its quiet rules. One winter evening, Tanjiro's path changed forever. He had gone down the mountain to sell charcoal, leaving before sunrise. The air was crisp and clear, the scent of pine sharp on the wind. In town, he greeted everyone with his usual smile. People knew Tanjiro, they trusted him, liked him. He helped carry heavy baskets, fixed broken shelves, listened to stories. There was a kindness in his eyes that made even strangers feel at ease. He sold his charcoal, shared small conversations, and stayed a little longer than usual, helping where he could. By the time he began his journey home, the sky had already darkened. The snow was falling thicker now, the mountain path veiled in white. Halfway up, an old man stopped him, warning him not to continue through the forest at night. "Demons roam after dark," the man said softly, his voice trembling like dry leaves. "Stay here till morning. You can go home safely when the sun rises." Tanjiro hesitated but obeyed. He stayed the night, grateful for the man's hospitality, unaware that this small act of caution would save his life and mark the beginning of his sorrow. As he rested by the fire, he thought of his family, of Nezuko's laughter, of the warmth waiting for him. Outside, the snow fell endlessly, covering the world in silence. When dawn came, Tanjiro hurried up the mountain, his breath sharp in the cold air. The snow was untouched, the world still and pale, but as he neared his home, something felt wrong. The scent in the air had changed. It was heavy, metallic, and cruel. His heart began to race. He ran faster, stumbling through the drifts, until he saw at the cabin door, half open, the snow inside stained with red. The world seemed to stop. Inside, his family lay motionless, his mother, his siblings all gone, their lives taken in the night by something he could not yet understand. Only Nezuko still breathed, faintly, her body trembling in his arms. Tanjiro's heart broke, but he did not cry. There was no time for that. He lifted her onto his back, the snow swallowing his footsteps, and began the desperate descent toward the village, hoping, praying for help. But as he ran, Nezuko stirred. Her breath deepened, her nails lengthened, her teeth sharpened. The warmth of her skin turned cold beneath his hands. When he looked into her eyes, he no longer saw the gentle sister he had always known, but something ancient and starving staring back. She had become a demon. Even then, Tanjiro did not let go. He begged her to fight it, to remember him, His voice cracked with desperation, but his heart refused to surrender. In the snow, they struggled, brother against sister, love against hunger, and somewhere in that chaos, Nezuko hesitated. The scent of blood filled the air, yet her tears began to fall. She shielded Tanjiro from the strike of a man who had appeared suddenly, a swordsman with eyes as cold as winter steel. That man was Giyu Tomioka, a demon slayer. His blade was drawn, ready to end Nezuko's life. But what he saw stopped him, a demon protecting a human, a brother protecting a sister. In that impossible moment, Giyu glimpsed something rare, something sacred. Against all reason, Nezuko resisted her hunger, her demon nature bending to her love for Tanjiro. Giyu spared them both. His decision defied logic and duty, but it was a choice born of quiet faith. Faith that even in the heart of darkness, something human could endure. He directed Tanjiro to seek a man named Sakonji Urokodaki, a teacher who lived at the foot of another mountain, and told him that if he truly wished to protect his sister, he must learn to fight. And so Tanjiro's journey began not with revenge, but with love, a love so strong that it refused to yield even to transformation, to fear, to death itself. He carried Nezuko gently, wrapped in cloth and silence, her small body sleeping in a box he built with trembling hands. Together they walked from one dawn to the next, two souls against the night. The spark of their story was not born from anger, but from compassion. Tanjiro never hated the demons he fought, only the sorrow that made them what they were. His heart remained soft even when his hands grew calloused from the sword. And Nezuko, the demon who refused to harm humans, became a symbol of hope, a reminder that love could survive even after the world had fallen apart. Through their bond, the story of Demon Slayer found its heart. It was not a tale of vengeance, but of endurance, not of hatred, but of understanding. Every step Tanjiro took, every breath he mastered, carried the quiet echo of that snowy morning, the moment when the night took everything, and yet love refused to fade. The journey that began with loss slowly unfolded into something greater, a path that wound between grief and resolve, between sorrow and the calm determination that would define Tanjiro Kamado. Each step he took down the mountain carried both weight and lightness, the ache of his past and the flicker of hope for what might still be saved. Nezuko slept quietly in the wooden box upon his back, the faint sound of her breathing reminding him, through the silence, that love still lived. Tanjiro's destination was Mount Sagiri, where the former water Hashira, Sakonji Urokodaki, made his home. The man was known as both a teacher and a recluse, one who understood the balance between patience and power. The path to him was not marked by signs or stones, only by the rhythm of the wind and the intuition of the traveler. Tanjiro walked for days through forests, where the air tasted of cedar and moss, where sunlight fell like silk through the trees. In that stillness, he began to understand the world in a new way, not as something cruel, but as something vast, waiting to be known. When he finally reached Urokodaki, it was not through words, but through endurance. The old man tested him before agreeing to teach, sending him across steep ravines and through mountain traps that tested the very limits of his body and heart. Tanjiro failed many times, falling, scraping, gasping for air, but he never stopped. What pushed him onward was not ambition, but the quiet thought of his sister's sleeping face and the promise he made to protect her no matter what. Urokodaki was a man of few words, his presence as steady as the mountains he lived among. His voice was calm, never cruel, though his lessons were harsh. He spoke of breathing, of how every living thing moves with rhythm, how every blade, every strike, every moment of clarity begins and ends with the breath. Tanjiro learned to align his heartbeat with his breathing, to listen not only with his ears but with his whole being. Water breathing was the first style Tanjiro learned, fluid, adaptable, ever-flowing. Like water, Urokodaki would say, you must yield and strike in the same motion. Water changes shape but never loses itself. At first these words felt impossible to understand, but over time, as Tanjiro practiced beneath waterfalls and through cold rivers, his movements began to shift. He no longer fought against the world but with it. His steps grew quieter, his strikes more graceful, his eyes clearer. Each form of water breathing carried its own rhythm and feeling. The first was the calm strike of a flowing river, simple but complete. Others mimicked the surge of waves, the spiral of whirlpools, the crash of waterfalls. Tanjiro trained until his muscles remembered what his mind could not yet grasp, that power was not in force, but in harmony. When he fought, he began to feel as though the water itself moved through him, his blade no longer separate from his breath. Through these months of training, the mountains became his world. Days passed slowly, marked by the rising and setting of the sun, by the steady rhythm of effort. The air grew sharper as winter approached, the ground coated in frost. Tanjiro learned to balance on thin branches, to move without disturbing snow, to feel danger in the shift of wind. Each lesson deepened his awareness not only of fighting, but of living. In the still moments between exhaustion and dawn, he would sit quietly, feeling the heartbeat of the earth beneath him, and understand this was what it meant to endure. But Urokodaki's teachings were not just about skill. He spoke often of compassion. A slayer must not forget, he said softly, one night, as the fire crackled between them, that demons were once people. Do not lose your humanity to destroy theirs. These words stayed with Tanjiro, sinking deep into the roots of his heart. He could not bring himself to hate the demons he would one day face. Even when he imagined them, he saw fragments of sorrow and desperation in their eyes. Training became a meditation. Every swing of the sword, every controlled breath, was a whisper of purpose. When Tanjiro stumbled, he smiled. When he bled, he pressed forward. Slowly, pain turned to rhythm, and rhythm turned to grace. The boy who had once struggled to climb mountains now moved like the wind itself. As time passed, Urokodaki began to speak less. He watched Tanjiro with quiet pride, the way a sculptor watches stone reveal its true form. When the time came for the final selection, the test that would decide whether Tanjiro could truly join the Demon Slayer Corps, Urokodaki stood at the edge of the forest, his red mask gleaming faintly in the moonlight. He said little, but his eyes, though hidden, carried warmth. "Return alive," he said, his voice steady, "and never forget who you are." The final selection took place on a mountain soaked with the memories of those who had failed before. Demons prowled in the dark, hungry and cunning. Tanjiro entered with calm steps, his sword steady, his heart anchored in every breath. The night was long and filled with struggle, but Tanjiro's movements flowed like the rivers he had trained beside. Each swing of his blade shimmered with the soft rhythm of water, each motion carrying the grace of stillness. When the dawn finally broke, he was among the few who survived. His body was weary, but his spirit shone quietly, like the morning after a storm. He had faced fear, pain, and the echo of death, and through it all, he had held to the kindness that defined him. When he returned to Urokodaki, the old man wept behind his mask. It was not sadness, but the deep relief of knowing that goodness had endured another night. From that moment forward, Tanjiro became not just a boy with a sword, but a slayer with purpose. He carried his sister's box upon his back, his teacher's lessons in his heart, and the breath of water in his every motion. His journey was far from over, but already he moved with the quiet grace of a river that knows its path. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the world-weighted demons stirred, the moon watched, and fate prepared its next trial. But for this moment, the mountains were still, the snow was falling, and Tanjiro's breath came softly and evenly, like the heartbeat of the world itself. There is a quiet in Nezuko Kamado that feels deeper than words. Since the moment she changed that night, when her humanity slipped away and something else took hold, she has spoken not a single sentence, and yet her silence has always said more than speech ever could. In the long hours between battles, when the forests rest beneath moonlight and Tanjiro's footsteps slow, it is Nezuko's presence that fills the stillness. The faint sound of her breathing from within the wooden box, the occasional rustle as she shifts in her sleep, these are the gentle reminders that even in a world of demons and sorrow, something pure remains. Her transformation was both a tragedy and a miracle. When Muzan Kibutsuji's curse took hold, it should have erased everything she was, her memory, her compassion, her light. But Nezuko resisted. The hunger that devoured other demons from within seemed to falter against her spirit. Even when her eyes turned crimson and her fangs formed, she did not lash out blindly. Instead, she shielded her brother, trembling but determined, her instincts bending toward protection rather than harm. It was as though her love for Tanjiro had rewritten the curse itself, weaving humanity into the very fabric of her demonic nature. As they traveled, Tanjiro often spoke softly to her through the box, telling her about the mountains, the villages, the scent of rain. He knew she could not answer, but he also knew she listened. When she was awake, she watched him with an expression that hovered between calm and curiosity. Her silence was not emptiness, it was depth, an ocean of unspoken understanding. Where others saw a demon, Tanjiro saw the faint glimmer of his sister's soul, alive and unbroken. Nezuko's size could shift with uncanny grace. She could shrink small enough to fit inside her wooden box, or grow to her full height in an instant, her movements fluid and deliberate. This ability seemed more than simple transformation. It felt like a reflection of her gentle adaptability, her willingness to bend without breaking. Even in combat, when her claws glowed with heat and her blood ignited into pink flame, there was elegance in her fury. Her strength was undeniable, but it was never cruel. It carried the same energy as her brother's water-breathing, controlled, flowing, and purposeful. There were moments, rare but profound, when Nezuko's eyes would soften as she looked upon humans. A memory would stir a flash of her mother's face. Her siblings' laughter and the monster within her would fall silent. She seemed to draw strength from love, as though kindness itself was her sustenance. When she fought, she did not kill for pleasure or hunger, but to protect the fragile thread of life that her family once shared. Nezuko's blood possessed a strange, holy quality. Unlike the venomous essence of most demons, her blood burned them, purging corruption with cleansing flame. It was both weapon and salvation, a manifestation of purity in a world consumed by shadow. This blood demon art became an extension of her will, protective, not destructive. When she used it, it was as if the last warmth of her humanity had found a way to survive in physical form. The pink fire shimmered like cherry blossoms in spring, gentle even as it consumed. She slept often, sometimes for months at a time, cocooned in the safety of her wooden box. Tanjiro worried, but Urokodaki once told him that Nezuko's slumber was her way of surviving without feeding on humans, that she gathered strength through rest, not blood. This detail made her all the more miraculous, a demon who defied the very laws of her kind through willpower and love. Her sleep became symbolic, a kind of dreaming resilience, as though she rested not just for herself, but for all who had lost their peace. When Nezuko awoke, her presence changed the atmosphere around her. Even the air seemed to soften. She would look at Tanjiro and tilt her head slightly, her bamboo muzzle muffling the faint hum. She made a sound, somewhere between a sigh and a note of recognition. Sometimes she would reach out a hand to pat his hair or tug lightly on his sleeve, small gestures that spoke of affection. In those moments, she was still the same girl who once laughed in the sunlight, helping her family gather firewood. The world had changed, but her heart had not. There were battles where Nezuko's power erupted without hesitation. When her brother was in danger, her demonic instincts became a wave of unstoppable energy. She moved like fire, every strike burning with emotion. But even in those moments, when her eyes glowed bright and fierce, she never lost control. Something within her always pulled back before the point of no return. It was as though the memory of her family's love formed a boundary no curse could cross. In quiet nights, after long journeys, Tanjiro would sometimes lift the box lid to let her see the stars. Nezuko's gaze would linger on the sky, her eyes reflecting the constellations. She would not speak, but her stillness was full of meaning. The stars above, silent and eternal, mirrored the calm within her, a serenity that even darkness could not take away. Tanjiro often wondered what she dreamed of during her long sleeps. Perhaps she dreamed of snow-covered mountains, of laughter by the fire, of the scent of pine and rain. Perhaps she dreamed of being human again, though, in many ways, she never stopped being one. Nezuko's journey was not defined by words, but by endurance. Her silence became a bridge between worlds, between human and demon, between night and dawn. Through her, the story of Demon Slayer spoke of something larger than vengeance or power. It spoke of compassion as strength, of gentleness as defiance. In a world filled with pain, Nezuko's quiet love was a rebellion in itself. As time went on and her control deepened, others began to see her differently. Once feared, she became a symbol of hope, proof that even the cursed could choose kindness. To the Demon Slayer Corps, her existence was both mystery and miracle, and to Tanjiro, she remained simply his sister, unchanged in the ways that mattered most. When the wind moved softly through the trees and the moonlight touched her hair, it seemed to whisper her story of a girl who lost her voice but kept her soul, of a demon who refused to become a monster. And in that stillness, as the world held its breath, Nezuko Kamado's silence spoke with a power that no scream could ever match. Within the vast world of the Demon Slayer Corps, there are few names spoken with more reverence than those of the Hashira the Pillars. They are the guardians of humanity, the strongest among slayers, each one a master of their breathing style and the embodiment of its spirit. Yet beneath their titles and their strength lies a quiet, shared solitude, the understanding that their lives are lived at the edge of death, not for glory, but for the fragile peace of others. When a new day dawns across the mountains and sunlight spills over the mist, the Hashira stand ready, unseen protectors of a world that never fully knows their names. They move through shadow and silence, each following a rhythm of breath that is both weapon and meditation. They do not fight for fame or for vengeance, but for something smaller and more sacred, the chance for one more family to live another day in safety. There are 9 Hashira, each representing a pillar of elemental mastery, each carrying a story of pain, devotion, and purpose. Their personalities differ like the changing seasons, yet all are bound by the same vow, to face the darkness without hesitation, no matter the cost. Giyu Tomioka, the water Hashira, moves like the current of a hidden river, silent, unwavering, shaped by sorrow. His expression rarely changes, and his words are few, but within that stillness lies a strength that does not need to announce itself. His technique flows from the lessons of Urokodaki, perfected into calm precision. When he moves, his blade carves through air and water as though the world itself bends around his control. Yet behind his stoicism is the memory of loss, the faces of comrades and friends who fell long ago. He carries their memory not as a burden, but as a tide that shapes his every motion. Shinobu Kocho, the insect Hashira, contrasts him in every way, small in stature but vast in grace, her voice lilting, her smile gentle. Yet beneath that softness lies the venom of precision, a mastery of toxins and strategy that no demon survives for long. Her blade, thin and elegant, delivers death not through brute force but through knowledge poisons crafted from her own study of demon anatomy. Her presence brings calm, though her eyes hold unspoken grief. She smiles to keep the world from seeing the storm inside, to remind herself that kindness is not weakness. Then there is Kyojuro Rengoku, the flame Hashira, a beacon of passion and strength, whose very spirit burns with light. His laughter is warm, his energy boundless, and his convictions unshakable. He fights not for hatred, but for duty, a sense of responsibility that fuels his every breath. To those around him he is like the sun, radiant, inspiring, and impossible to ignore. When he draws his sword, fire dances with purpose, not destruction. His strength is love made visible, and even when darkness threatens, he never lets his flame waver. Tengen Uzui, the sound Hashira, sees life as performance, every strike, every step, a note in a grand symphony of battle. Dressed in shining jewels, his movements echo with rhythm and confidence, yet beneath the bravado lies deep loyalty to his wives, his comrades, and his ideals. His strength comes not from arrogance, but from the refusal to live without beauty and meaning. In his world, fighting is art, and art is survival. Muichiro Tokito, the mist Hashira, drifts through life as though half asleep, lost in thoughts that fade like clouds. But within that fog lies a sharpness that borders on divine, instinctive, effortless, pure. Though his memories blur, his swordsmanship is crystalline. When he fights, the air around him thickens with serenity, and the distinction between illusion and reality dissolves. He is both dream and storm, his youth hiding the weight of an ancient calm. Mitsuri Kanroji, the love Hashira, embodies warmth and empathy in a world that has little of either. Her heart is as strong as her sword arm, her emotions as bright as spring blossoms. Many misunderstand her joy as fragility, but her strength is born from deep feeling the courage to love openly in a life built around loss. Her unique fighting style, swift and ribbon-like, reflects her personality, flexible, expressive, and bound by devotion. She fights with the strength of affection itself, each swing a declaration that gentleness can coexist with power. Obanai Iguro, the serpent Hashira, lives in contrast, strict yet caring, quiet yet fiercely loyal. His movements are serpentine, unpredictable, precise. His companion, Kaburamaru the snake, moves with him as one body, one will. Obanai's devotion to order and duty hides a soul that has longed for acceptance. His life is a story of discipline shaped by guilt. His love for Mitsuri, a silent confession that remains unspoken, except through his actions. Sanemi Shinazugawa, the wind Hashira, is a storm given form. His temper burns hot, his emotions wild and untamed, yet his strength comes from heartbreak, from watching the people he loved taken from him by demons. He hides his kindness behind anger, believing that fury is easier to bear than pain. But deep down, He is a man of fierce compassion, protecting others even as he pushes them away. His sword moves like a gale, destructive and cleansing all at once. Finally, Gyome Himejima, the stone Hashira, stands as the quiet foundation upon which the core rests. Towering and gentle, his eyes are blind, but his perception transcends sight. His prayers are steady, his resolve unbreakable. Every swing of his massive weapon is both a plea and a benediction. To him, strength is not rage, but faith. Faith in humanity, in compassion, in the idea that even amidst endless death, something sacred endures. Together, the Hashira are not merely warriors. They are ideals, shaped by loss and refined by purpose. They each carry the memory of someone they could not save, yet use that pain as their source of strength. When they gather beneath the sunlight filtering through the core headquarters, the air hums with quiet reverence. No words are needed. They understand one another through scars and silence. They know that their fates are uncertain, that their battles will always come at a cost, but in that acceptance lies peace. They do not fight because they expect to win. They fight because someone must hold the line until morning, and when dawn breaks, it does so because of them, unseen, unsung, but eternal in their purpose. The Hashira are the pillars that keep the world from falling. They stand against the night not because they are unafraid, but because they know fear and choose to move forward anyway. And as the sun rises each day, spilling its first light over the mountains, the world rests quietly in their care, unaware of how close it has come to darkness, saved again and again by the calm and endless breath of the Hashira. Among the pillars, Giyu Tomioka stands apart, as still and quiet as a frozen river. When others speak, he listens. When others fight with roaring hearts, his blade moves in silence. To many, he seems distant, unreachable, a man carved from cold water and solitude. Yet beneath that calm exterior lies a current of emotion that runs deep and unseen, like the hidden flow of a mountain stream. Giyu is not without feeling. He simply carries it differently, quietly, so that it does not spill into the world around him. Long before he became the water Hashira, Giyu was a boy shaped by loss. His life, like so many others in this world, began with tragedy. The faces of those he loved were taken from him far too soon, and in their absence, silence became his companion. It was that silence that first taught him restraint, the understanding that words are fleeting, but choices endure. When Urokodaki found him and took him in, Giyu was still fragile, his grief hidden behind the determination to survive. Under his teacher's guidance, he learned the discipline of breathing, the flow of water style, and the steady calm of purpose. But even as he grew stronger, the ache within him never truly disappeared. When Giyu fights, his movements resemble water not only in form but in spirit. He does not resist his opponent's strength. He absorbs it, redirects it, and then releases it. His technique is a conversation with motion itself, a dialogue of rhythm, patience, and inevitability. To those who watch him, it appears effortless, like watching a stream cut through stone. But that serenity is hard-won, the result of years spent perfecting balance between action and stillness, emotion and control. The water-breathing techniques he wields are among the oldest in the core. Each form flows into the next, with natural grace: the crashing wave, the twisting whirlpool, the tranquil surface before the storm. Yet Giyu alone developed one that no other slayer has mastered, the 11th form, dead calm. In this state, his movements become nearly invisible. The air grows quiet, the world slows, and the chaos of battle fades into nothing. Within that stillness he acts with perfect precision, ending conflict before it begins. It is a reflection of who he is composed, unwavering, complete, and yet the stillness that gives Gyu his power also isolates him. He carries the belief that he does not belong among the Hashira, that his strength came at too great a cost. Survivor's guilt has wrapped around his heart like mist, convincing him that his life was spared by accident, not worthiness. When others laugh or gather, Gyu lingers on the edges, watching but not joining. His silence, misread by many as indifference, is in truth the quiet of someone who feels deeply but fears the sound of his own pain. Despite this, Gyu's compassion runs deep. His encounter with Tanjiro and Nezuko was proof of that. In another world, he might have killed Nezuko on sight, a demon to be destroyed without hesitation. But in that brief moment, as Tanjiro threw himself between his sister and death, Gyu saw something he had not seen in years: hope. The love between siblings, the refusal to give up, the belief that goodness could survive even within darkness. It stirred something within him long dormant. His blade wavered, and mercy became his choice. It was that act of restraint that changed everything, setting into motion the story that followed. Though Gyu does not often show it, he cares deeply for those he fights beside. His loyalty to Urokodaki and his quiet pride in Tanjiro's growth reveal a tenderness hidden beneath layers of reserve. He may not express it with words or smiles, but his actions speak. When others are in danger, Gyu steps forward without hesitation. When loss strikes the core, his grief is silent, but it lingers in the way he trains, the way he watches over his comrades from afar. In moments of solitude, Gyu often visits rivers and lakes, finding peace in the sound of flowing water. He sits by the edge, his reflection trembling on the surface, and thinks of the people who once stood beside him. He knows that water, though it reflects the sky, always moves onward, that its strength lies in its ability to continue. Perhaps that is why he chose water breathing. It is not just a fighting style, it is a philosophy, one that mirrors his quiet endurance. The other Hashira respect him, though they rarely understand him. Rengoku admired his steadfastness. Shinobu teased him for his silence, but saw in him the same loneliness that she carried. Even Sanemi, brash and hot-tempered, could not help but acknowledge his control. Gyu never sought their approval, yet earned it through quiet constancy by being the one who would never falter, even when others did. There is a kind of beauty in the way Gyu embodies contradiction. He is both strong and fragile, isolated yet devoted, calm yet haunted. His heart has been shaped by sorrow, but his hands still protect. In his quiet, there is understanding. In his solitude, there is strength. When night falls and the core rests, Gyu often remains awake. He listens to the sound of wind in the trees, the distant trickle of streams, the steady pulse of his breathing. It reminds him that life moves forward, always flowing, always changing. He does not know what awaits him in the days to come, whether he will live to see peace or fall to protect it, but he has made peace with that uncertainty. For Gyu, duty is not sacrifice. It is simply the natural course of water finding its way home. And so he continues, each battle fought with quiet precision, each victory carrying the memory of those who are gone. When he draws his blade, it gleams with the reflection of the sky above, fleeting, fragile, and endless. He does not speak of destiny, nor does he seek redemption. He only seeks balance between sorrow and serenity, between death and the small, enduring beauty of the world he defends. Gyu Tomioka is the still heart of the storm, the calm within chaos, the embodiment of water's eternal lesson, that strength can flow softly and that even silence can save lives. Shinobu Kocho moves through the world as though she were gliding, each step a whisper, each motion deliberate and weightless. To watch her fight is to see a kind of beauty that feels both fragile and fatal, like a butterfly landing on the edge of a blade. She is small, her stature unassuming, but behind that gentle smile lies one of the most dangerous minds in the Demon Slayer Corps. Her voice is light and melodic, but her words often carry truth sharper than any sword. She does not raise her tone, for she has long since learned that even the softest voice can pierce the heart more deeply than steel. Shinobu's strength is not built on brute power. It comes from grace, precision, and intellect. Where others cleave demons in two, she dances around them, her blade flashing like a streak of violet light. Her sword is thin, its edge so fine it cannot decapitate, yet every movement she makes is decisive. Instead of relying on raw force, Shinobu channels her skill through chemistry, through poison, through an understanding of how the smallest details can determine life or death. Her blade, laced with wisteria extract, delivers venom with every strike, a toxin so potent that even the most resilient demons cannot withstand it for long. This approach to combat mirrors the woman she has become. Shinobu knows the value of patience, of subtlety, of restraint. She fights not for glory, but for balance, for a kind of justice that doesn't scream, but instead sighs softly, like the last breath of an ending storm. Her philosophy is simple. Destruction is not the only path to victory. Sometimes, gentleness can carry the sharpest edge, but beneath her calm and her scientific precision lies a wound that never truly healed. The loss of her elder sister, Kanae, carved something deep into Shinobu's heart. Kanae was warmth made humankind, gentle, and endlessly forgiving. It was she who first dreamed of a world where demons and humans might one day coexist, where hatred might give way to understanding. When that dream was taken from her, when Kanae's life was stolen by the same creatures she had pitied, Shinobu's kindness hardened into resolve. Her smile remained, but it became armor, a way to carry her sister's warmth, even when her own heart had grown cold. Every time Shinobu smiles now, it is for Kanae. Every time she fights, it is for the promise she made to her. That promise, though gentle in words, has the weight of iron. It is what drives her to study relentlessly, to refine her poisons, to seek victory through intelligence rather than rage. She cannot bring herself to forgive demons as Kanae once did, but she honors her sister by fighting without cruelty. There is sorrow in every swing of her sword, not hatred, but a quiet ache that never fades. In the butterfly estate, where injured slayers come to heal, Shinobu's presence brings calm. The air smells faintly of medicine and flowers. Soft light filters through paper screens, and the sound of wind chimes lingers in the halls. Here, she is both healer and commander, guiding others with the same steady hand she uses to mix her antidotes. To her apprentices, especially Kanao Tsuyuri, she is patient, though her patience is lined with steel. She believes that strength is built not through ease, but through perseverance, through the quiet endurance of pain. When Shinobu looks at Kanao, she sees the reflection of two lives, her sister's warmth and her own will intertwined. She trains her not to imitate, but to think, to decide, to feel. It is perhaps the greatest gift Shinobu can give, for she knows what it is to live behind a mask, to act instead of express. She hopes that one day Kanao will surpass her not just in battle, but in heart. Shinobu's compassion is complicated. She can show mercy to the wounded and laugh gently with her peers, yet her gaze hardens when she faces demons. In those moments, her kindness transforms into focus, her smile into something almost sorrowful. To her, each demon is a tragedy, a life twisted into darkness, a reminder of what was lost. She does not hate them. She despises the fate that made them what they are. When she strikes, it is with the intent not only to kill, but to release. The butterfly motif that defines her presence is more than decoration. It is a symbol of transformation, of fleeting beauty, of the balance between fragility and strength. Butterflies live only briefly, yet they bring grace to the world around them. In the same way, Shinobu accepts the transience of life, hers, her comrades, and even her enemies. She knows that every breath, every heartbeat, is precious because it will not last forever. Sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, she walks through the gardens of the estate. The flowers she and Kanai once tended still bloom, their lilies, wisteria, and chrysanthemums swaying gently in the early light. The air hums softly with insects, and the sky shifts from violet to pale blue. She closes her eyes and listens to the world breathe, and for a brief moment, she can almost feel her sister beside her again. The scent of wisteria reminds her that beauty and pain often grow from the same soil. Shinobu's strength lies not in how loud she fights, but in how quietly she endures. Her power is the kind that asks nothing in return, the kind that heals even as it destroys. To the world, she is a slayer, a warrior, a scientist. But to those who look closer, she is something gentler, a keeper of balance, a guardian of small mercies in a time of endless violence. She often wonders if her sister would approve of the person she has become. Would Kanaya see the anger that still burns beneath the calm? Would she recognize the smile that hides 1,000 unspoken apologies? These questions haunt Shinobu, but they also drive her forward. For every demon she slays, for every life she saves, she whispers a silent promise to the one she lost. I will keep your dream alive, even if it's through different means. And when she moves, when the wind catches her houri patterned with butterflies, when her sword flashes once and the battle ends in silence, she seems to embody that dream completely. A fleeting beauty, gentle and deadly, gone before the world can even realize what it has seen. Shinobu Kocho, the insect Hashira, is proof that strength can bloom from sorrow and that even venom can heal when wielded with love. She is a dance of poison and grace, a reminder that sometimes the most delicate things carry the greatest power. There are people whose presence feels like fire, not the kind that burns, but the kind that warms a cold room and lights the dark corners of the heart. Kyojuro Rengoku was such a flame. His laughter carried like a spark, bright and alive, and his voice was full of certainty, even when the world around him trembled. To watch him fight was to see light take shape, not wild or consuming, but full of purpose and radiance. He stood as the flame Hashira, the embodiment of passion and duty, a guardian who believed that strength was not measured in power alone, but in the courage to protect others with joy. Rengoku came from a long line of swordsmen. His father, once the flame Hashira before him, had grown weary and bitter after years of battle. The warmth that once guided their family flickered low, leaving Kyojuro to carry its embers forward alone. He did not resent this burden. Instead, he accepted it with gratitude, smiling even when his father's silence felt colder than winter. If the flame wavers, he would tell himself quietly, then I will tend it until it burns bright again. From a young age, he trained with relentless optimism. His mornings began before dawn, his shouts echoing across the dojo as the first light touched the world. Every swing of his sword was fueled not by ambition, but by the simple desire to do what was right. He studied the forms of flame breathing, each one fierce and graceful, like the many moods of fire, steady embers, roaring blaze, sudden flare, and enduring glow. In his movements, there was no hesitation. His strikes burned with confidence, yet his heart remained humble. What made Rengoku special was not only his skill but his outlook. Even in the face of horror, he smiled. Even in sorrow, he spoke with warmth. To him, life's fragility was not something to mourn, but something to honor. "It is precisely because we burn briefly," he once said, "that our light matters so much." Every person he met, every student, every stranger felt that conviction in his presence. His energy filled the air like the crackle of a campfire on a cold night, gentle and reassuring. When he became a Hashira, Rengoku carried that same brightness into every battle. Against demons he was fierce and unrelenting. Against despair he was immovable. But even his strength was tempered by compassion. He believed in nurturing others, especially the young slayers just beginning their journey. He praised them for every small victory, encouraged them through every failure. His words had the power to kindle confidence in others, to remind them that courage could exist alongside fear. The Mugen Train mission would become the story by which most would remember him, a journey that began with laughter and ended in quiet heroism. On that train, Rengoku's flame burned at its brightest. Surrounded by hundreds of innocent lives, he did not hesitate when danger emerged. Against Enmu's illusions and Akaza's overwhelming might, he stood unshaken. His flame wove through the night like a beacon, illuminating courage in everyone who witnessed it. Even as his body weakened, his spirit remained vast and unyielding. When Akaza offered him the chance to become a demon, to abandon mortality and live forever with strength beyond measure, Rengoku refused without hesitation. His smile did not falter. He understood something deeper than power, that meaning is found not in how long we live, but in how brightly we burn while we are here. "Growing old and dying is the beauty of being human," he said softly, his eyes shining like embers in the dark, "because we can cherish this moment all the more." His final moments were not of fear, but of acceptance. As the sun rose and his strength faded, he looked to Tanjiro and the others, his voice calm even as his breath grew shallow. He did not lament his fate, nor curse the world for its cruelty. He smiled, his heart steady, his purpose fulfilled. "Set your heart ablaze," he told them. "Don't stop. Keep moving forward." They were simple words, but they carried the weight of everything he believed. In death, Rengoku became what he had always been in life, a guiding flame. His absence left a silence that echoed through the core, but his spirit lingered in the resolve of those he inspired. Tanjiro carried his words like a heartbeat. Inosuke remembered his laughter. And even Giyu and Sanemi, so reserved and distant, felt his warmth when they fought beneath the morning sunday. At the Rengoku household, his younger brother Senjuro continued to tend the flame. Though grief weighed heavy, he found comfort in his brother's journals, filled with kind observations and unwavering optimism. "If I have the strength," one entry read, "then I must use it for good. If I have the heart, then I must fill it with joy. That is the duty of flame." Sometimes, when the wind rustles through the trees, or the candlelight flickers late at night, it feels as though Rengoku's laughter still drifts through the air. His presence is not gone, merely transformed, like fire returning to the sun, like warmth remaining long after the embers have cooled. In the stillness of memory, Rengoku reminds the world of something simple yet profound, that goodness is not weakness, that joy can coexist with strength, and that even in a story of demons and despair, Light will always find its way through. He is proof that a heart filled with purpose never truly extinguishes. And so, when slayers train beneath the red glow of dawn, they whisper his name with quiet reverence. They swing their swords with renewed resolve, each strike carrying a fragment of his spirit. The fire he kindled continues to burn not just in blades and battles, but in kindness, in courage, in the simple act of facing another day with a steady smile. Kyojuro Rengoku was the flame Hashira, but beyond that, he was a reminder of what it means to live fully, to burn brightly, and to give warmth to others until the very last breath. His light did not vanish with his death. It lives in every sunrise, in every act of bravery, in every spark of hope that refuses to go out. Among the pillars who hold the night at bay, there are three whose paths wind in very different directions, like rivers that begin in the same mountain and find separate seas. One moves as if half asleep, his thoughts drifting like morning fog. One strides with a flourish, hearing battles as music and answering them with rhythm. And one coils inward, careful and exacting, his gaze as sharp and searching as a serpent's tongue. Mist, sound, and serpent, three forms, three hearts, and one quiet vow to keep the fragile light of the world alive. Muichiro Tokito is the youngest among the pillars, yet when he stands in still air, time seems to fold around him. There is an absent-minded calm about him, a soft distance in his eyes, as if he is listening to something far away that no one else can hear. Memory for him is a veil. The past comes in fragments, colors without lines, faces without names, and yet when a sword rests in his hand, the haze clears. The body remembers what the heart had to set aside to survive. His mist breathing is not merely a set of forms. It is a way of moving that lets the world blur until only intention remains. Footsteps vanish. Edges soften. One moment Muichiro is before his foe. The next, he is a ripple of air beside them, a silver flash where a heartbeat skips. The serenity that clings to him is not empty. It is the stillness that follows grief. The quiet that moves in after loss has spoken its last word. In the rare moments when the fog lifts and memory returns, it brings both ache and strength. He remembers the warmth of a twin, the promise that even small hands can reach for tomorrow, and the way unfairness arrives without explanation. Rather than harden into anger, Muichiro's spirit distilled into clarity. He favors no flourish, hoards no rage. He simply acts, and action carries him through. The forms he uses, the drifting step, the layered feint, the sudden cut that arrives like a breeze turning cold, look gentle until the steel completes its arc. Then the mist parts, and quiet falls. In his presence, the other pillars sometimes forget his youth because he carries himself without need of reassurance. Praise slides off him like dew from leaves. Criticism does the same. He does not posture or compare. The measure he keeps is internal, a private metronome set by duty alone, yet there is a hidden tenderness in him. When he pauses among cedar trees, when he looks up into a sky turning pale after a long night, there is a light in his eyes that belongs to a child who once believed the world could be kind. Perhaps it still can be, if his blade moves swiftly enough. Where Muichiro is mist, Tengen Uzui is thunder wrapped in silk. He enters a room as a drumbeat enters a festival, not to drown out the song, but to raise it. Jewels sparkle across his brow, beads catch the sun on his arms, and his laughter lands like a cymbal crash that makes even fear look over its shoulder. For Tengen, survival has always been tied to rhythm. Raised in shadow, Trained amid harsh rules and colder silences, he forged for himself a different way to live. If he must fight, then he will fight flamboyantly. If he must face death, then he will stare it down with eye makeup perfect and posture tall. Beauty, to him, is not vanity, it is defiance. It says, "You cannot take the color from my life, even if you take the life." His sound breathing turns battle into notation. He listens to the cadence of an enemy's movements, hears patterns in the clash of steel and the scrape of stone, then composes an answer in the language of explosives and twin blades. Each step lands on a beat. Each throw completes a phrase. The more complex the chaos, the more alive he becomes within it, finding percussive paths where others would hear only noise. Yet beneath the showmanship rests a deep faithfulness. His wives are not adornments to his legend, but anchors to his heart. With them, the mask slips, and the performer becomes a man who values shared meals, quiet jokes, and the simple joy of walking home together after danger has passed. When he mentors younger slayers, Tengen refuses smallness. He calls them to rise bigger than their fear, to meet terror with a kind of dancing steadiness. "Move your feet, find your beat," he tells them with a grin that hides a prayer. In the glare of Demon's eyes he stays playful, because he knows despair steals timing, and timing wins lives. If he steps loudly, it is to draw darkness toward himself and away from those it would swallow. And if he boasts, it is to build courage in others until the boast becomes true. The sparkle and the swagger are not disguises so much as banners, bright colors flung high in places where hope is hard to see. Then there is Obanai Iguro, whose path is narrow and precise. He walks as if the ground itself requires permission, his steps a little slanted, his voice measured and quiet. A bandage conceals his mouth, not only to hide a scar, but to keep the boundaries he has set between himself and the world. Where Tengen declares, Obanai observes. Where Muichiro drifts, Obanai coils. He is strict with himself beyond reason, a structure built around a history that tried to break him before he learned how to stand. From that history he took two lessons: that chaos must be bound by rules, and that love, if it exists, must be safeguarded with unshakable resolve. The serpent breathing he wields is intimate and unnerving, all angles and curves that should not meet but somehow do. His sword finds seams in armor no eye should notice. The blade bends through invisible openings and arrives exactly where it must. He fights close, not with the grand sweep of wind or flame, but with a quiet, insistent pressure that turns escape into a lie. Kaburamaru, the small serpent who rides his shoulder, is both companion and compass, guiding his sight and extending his senses. They move together like a single thought, a flicker of tongue, a shift of weight, a cut that seems to appear from nowhere. He keeps others at a distance, yet devotion burns inside him with a heat he will not name aloud. Around Mitsuri Kenroji, the love Hashira, the precision of his movements softens by the width of a heartbeat. He prepares her favorite sweets without comment. He watches the way she greets the morning as if it is a friend, and he keeps, privately, a list of ways the world should be kinder to her. If he scolds, it is because fear translates in him as severity. If he seems hard, it is because gentleness feels to him like a luxury he must earn. The tenderness he withholds from himself, he pours into service, patrols taken without complaint, orders obeyed without spectacle, lines held against odds that would make most men falter. When these three gather with the other pillars, their contrasts become a map of how many shapes courage can take. Muichiro sits a short distance away, mind sifting clouds while his body is ready to stand in an instant. Tengen leans back, arms crossed and smile bright, already scoring the corridor creaks and birdsong into a rhythm only he can hear. Obanai watches perimeter lines. Others do not even notice. Subtle tension coiled from shoulder to wrist in case anything crosses a threshold it should not. Between them flows the unspoken understanding of those who have looked at the same dark and decided, each in their own grammar, to answer it. They carry different burdens. Muichiro bears the weight of remembering and forgetting, and the strange mercy that comes from both. Tengen bears the duty to turn terror into theater, so that others can find a step to follow and live. Obanai bears the vow to turn chaos into order, even if the cost is softness he would rather reserve for one person alone. But when the crows arrive with their sharp messages, and the sky begins to shade toward night, all three rise with the same simple intention, to move toward danger so that others may sleep. On nights when the moon is thin and the air tastes of iron, Muichiro's blade draws pale arcs that vanish as soon as they appear. The mist hides what it must and reveals only the end. On nights when drums would be drowned by thunder, Tengen's laughter cuts through the storm and reminds his comrades that rhythm still exists, even here, even now. And on nights when fear slithers into the hearts of the newly sworn, Obanai's steady voice lays down rules that hold like stones across a river. Step there, breathe here, now strike. If one listens closely at dawn, after a long patrol has ended, there is a pattern to their breaths as they rest. Muichiro's is even and quiet, a glassy pond unbroken by wind. Tengen's is an easy cadence, a hummed chorus trailing into silence. Obanai's is measured and deliberate, as if each inhale is counted and each exhale recorded in a ledger only he can read. 3 different songs, all returning to the same hush as the sun lifts beyond the trees. Mist, sound, and serpent, 3 languages for the same promise. The promise that when shadow lengthens, someone will be there. That when memory hurts, there is purpose to hold it. That when panic rises, there is rhythm to breathe by. That when disorder claws at the edges, there is a line that will not break. And if the world never knows the details of how they kept it together, the world will still wake to morning, which is, in the end, the only applause the pillars ever ask to hear. In the quiet moments between battles, when the wind drifts low across the forest floor and the smell of damp earth lingers in the air, it is easy to forget that the demons of this world were once human. Each one carries a history that has been twisted, stretched thin, until it no longer resembles the life it came from. Their strength is unnatural, but their pain is often terribly ordinary. Hunger, loss, envy, fear, all things that belong to people long before they turn into monsters. To understand the demons of this world is to understand the fragile line between mercy and horror. When night falls in Demon Slayer's world, it is not simply darkness that descends, it is the weight of stories unfinished, of souls that refuse to rest. Demons do not rise from nowhere. They are made, often at moments when despair eclipses hope entirely. The offer of eternal life, of power beyond reason, arrives like a whisper when someone has nothing left to lose. And so they drink the blood of Muzan Kibutsuji, the first demon, and in doing so, abandon the last of their humanity. Yet somewhere, deep within, a faint trace of who they were remains, a shadow that sometimes flickers at the edge of their monstrous eyes. The first demons that Tanjiro encounters are not grand villains, but distorted echoes of grief. They lurk in small villages and forgotten corners, feeding on the lost and the unguarded. The swamp demon, who divides himself into 3 forms, moves through the murk like a living nightmare. He remembers none of his past, yet he hoards the faces of the girls he has consumed, unable to let go of their beauty even as he destroys it. The demon who attacks the Kamado family has no name at all, only hunger. These early encounters teach Tanjiro a truth that will follow him through the entire story: that pity and resolve must coexist. To fight without compassion would make him hollow, but to hesitate in compassion would cost lives. As his journey continues, the faces of demons grow clearer, more human in their tragedy. There is the drum demon, Kyogai, who once loved the sound of rhythm so much that he sought perfection in it. When his talent waned and his master cast him aside, bitterness curdled into obsession. Even as a demon, he could not stop seeking a pattern, a beat that would make the world recognize him again. His home became a labyrinth of shifting rooms, walls pounding like the skin of a great drum, echoing his own frustrated heart. When Tanjiro defeats him, he bows in respect not to the monster he has slain, but to the artist who lost himself in the noise. Then there is Rui, the spider demon who waits upon Mount Natagumo. His tale is woven from longing. Once a sickly boy, frail and cherished by his parents, he was transformed into a demon by Muzan's blood. The strength he gained came at the cost of the bond he treasured most. His family, horrified, tried to save him by dying with him, and in that moment, the child he had been shattered. To fill the emptiness, Rui built a false family of demons, forcing them to act out the roles he had lost. His cruelty was not born of hatred, but of desperation. He wanted love to stay, even if he had to chain it down. When the sun claims him, and his false web burns away, he sees the vision of his true parents reaching for him once more, forgiveness blooming where punishment ends. The 12 Kizuki, the elite demons who serve Muzan, each hold their own fragments of tragedy. Daki and Gyutaro, the siblings of the Pleasure District, mirror the Kamados in a dark reflection. Born into poverty and scorn, they learned cruelty early and wore it like armor. Gyutaro's resentment became venom. Daki's beauty became both shield and curse. Yet even in their monstrous forms, they clung to one another. When they fall, it is together, their hands joined in the firelight, speaking to each other not as demons, but as brother and sister who never stop sharing the same hunger for love. Akaza's story carries the ache of redemption deferred. Before he was a demon, he was a boy named Hakuji, who stole medicine for his sick father and was beaten for it. Every act of kindness he offered the world was met with loss. His father's death, his lover's murder, each wound pushed him further from mercy. Muzan's offer found him when all light had gone out. As a demon, he sought strength endlessly, equating victory with worth. Yet even centuries later, he still cannot strike a woman. Some part of him, buried deep beneath rage and bloodlust, remembers the promise of gentleness that once defined him. When Rengoku faces him, Akaza sees for the first time in centuries what true honor looks like. And for a moment, the monster flinches. In many ways, the demons are the mirror that the demon slayers must look into, a reflection of what happens when purpose breaks and suffering festers too long. Every demon is a story of imbalance, of a desire taken too far or a sorrow that could not find its way home. They are the embodiment of extremes, the artist who cannot stop perfecting, the child who cannot stop seeking love, the warrior who cannot stop fighting. In their hunger they show what it means to be human, stripped of the boundaries that make compassion possible. The power they wield is as varied as the lives they once lived. Blood demon arts, born from Muzan's influence and their own obsessions, manifest as extensions of identity. Rui's threads slice and bind, echoing his desire to control connection. Kyogai's drums warp space and time with his own heartbeat. Daki's ribbons shimmer with vanity and grace, while Gyutaro's sickles drip with envy. Each ability is a confession written in flesh and shadow. Even Muzan's own shapeshifting, his countless forms and hidden hearts, speaks of his refusal to be known, his terror of mortality disguised as power. What makes Demon Slayer's world haunting is not that its demons are powerful, but that they are recognizable. We see in them the impulses we all understand, the wish to be seen, to be loved, to be free of pain. The difference lies in choice, and in the fragile mercy of being able to change before it is too late. Tanjiro, again and again, sees this thread and refuses to let it break. Even as his sword moves, he prays for their peace. It is this combination unflinching resolve and bottomless empathy that defines him, and perhaps redeems those he defeats. The final gift that many demons receive is not death, but remembrance. The moment their bodies dissolve into ash, memory floods back parents' laughter, friends' faces, the sound of rain on a roof from a time when they were still human. For an instant, the curse lifts, and they see themselves not as monsters but as children who took a wrong turn in the dark. The mercy that follows is quiet. It does not excuse their crimes, but it offers release. The audience, the slayers, and the fallen all breathe the same small sigh, as if saying, "This is enough. The night can have its silence again." In the end, the demons of this world are not simply villains. They are reminders that even in the cruelest places, sorrow has roots in something once beautiful, and that light, no matter how dim, still reaches the corners where monsters dwell. And perhaps, in the hush that follows every battle, when the ashes scatter like stardust on the wind, they finally find the peace they could never hold in life. Long before the name Demon Slayer was ever whispered, before the corps were formed, and before any blade turned black in the moonlight, there was Muzan Kibutsuji. His story begins not as a legend, but as a frail heartbeat in a time when medicine was more prayer than science. Muzan was once human, a man whose own mortality terrified him more than anything else. His body failed him, his heart slowing to stillness before his life had truly begun. In that narrow space between death and despair, a doctor gave him a cure, said to draw him back from the brink. It worked, in a way. He lived, but the life that returned was not the one he had lost. His heart beat again, but his blood turned black. His body awakened not to sunlight, but to shadow. That was the birth of the first demon. Muzan's transformation was the seed of every nightmare that would follow. In his veins flowed an undying curse, and in his soul the hollow ache of one who could never die. He became the perfect contradiction, both infinite and incomplete. His first breath as a demon was filled not with gratitude but with fury. The doctor who had saved him became his first victim, devoured before the man could explain that the final step of the cure required the light of the Sunday. Had Muzan waited, perhaps he could have walked beneath daylight without fear, but patience was never his gift. From that moment on, his curse and his hunger became one. He discovered quickly that he could share his blood, pass fragments of his own power to others, creating new demons who would serve and fear him. Some survived the transformation. Most did not. Those who lived were changed forever, their bodies remade, their hearts enslaved. Muzan could sense them across miles, whisper to them through his blood, and extinguish their lives with a thought. They called him Kibutsuji-sama, but he preferred no titles. He was the beginning, and in his own mind, the only true perfection this world had ever achieved. He wore countless faces across centuries, slipping through history like a rumor. A scholar, a nobleman, a musician, a child, his disguises changed, but his intent never did. Muzan's desire was to become something beyond even what he was, a being untouched by any weakness, invincible in every sense. The sun remained his greatest enemy, and so he sought endlessly for a way to conquer it. In his search, he left a trail of suffering that stretched farther than any map could show. The demons he created were, to him, experiments, each one a test, each death a data point. When one grew too strong or disobedient, he destroyed them without hesitation. When one failed to meet his expectations, he replaced them. It was only the 12 Kizuki who held his focus for longer, the 12 moons that revolved around his darkness. But even they were tools, blades to be sharpened or broken as needed. His cruelty was not loud or flamboyant, it was cold, scientific, the kind of detachment that makes suffering seem natural. He did not rage, he expected, and that quiet certainty was often worse than anger. In the Demon Slayer Corps, stories of Muzan were told like ghost tales. Children who joined were warned that he could change form at will, that he could move among humans unseen. To the Hashira, his name was both a mission and a promise. They knew that the end of their long struggle would come only when Muzan was destroyed. Yet the man himself rarely appeared. He preferred to act through others, manipulating his enemies as he did his own creations. His patience, once absent, had been learned over centuries not out of humility, but because eternity had taught him that time was his ally. For all his intelligence, Muzan was haunted by one fear, the blue spider lily. The flower that had once been part of his human cure became his obsession. It bloomed rarely, hidden from his grasp, perhaps by nature itself. Without it, he could not perfect his form. He sent demons across the world to find it, and every failure only deepened his paranoia. The idea that a single flower, fragile and mortal, could hold dominion over him enraged him more than any sword or sunlight ever could. It was a reminder that he was not complete, that something small and gentle could still defy him. Beneath the veneer of control, there was always a flicker of terror in Muzan, not fear of death, but fear of insignificance. He had lived so long, seen so much, and yet created nothing that would outlast him. The demons he made turned on one another, the humans he consumed faded into silence, and every century felt emptier than the last. Immortality, once a promise, had become a prison of repetition. He could mimic humanity, wear its skin, even simulate its emotions, but he could not feel them without tasting rot in his mouth. Every joy was counterfeit, every companionship temporary. There were moments, rare and fleeting, when he glimpsed the truth of what he had become. A child's laughter heard through an open window, the warmth of sunlight on a wall he dared not touch, the faint memory of the doctor's calm voice before he silenced it forever. These moments came and went like echoes in a cave, quickly swallowed by the roar of his pride. Muzan told himself he did not need the sun, that fear was a mark of lesser beings. And yet, every time dawn came, he retreated deeper underground, like a ghost ashamed of being seen. Muzan's strength was unmatched. His body could reshape itself at will, multiplying hearts and brains, sending tendrils of flesh through stone and steel. Blades that should have severed him were met with regeneration faster than the eye could follow. To kill him seemed impossible. To face him was to confront a force of nature disguised as a man. Yet for all his power, the thing that undid him was not a weapon, but a will stronger than his own. The combined resolve of countless lives, Tanjiro's compassion, Nezuko's light, the pillar's unyielding courage, gathered into something even eternity could not ignore. In the end, Muzan's greatest failure was not losing the fight, but misunderstanding the world he tried to dominate. He believed strength meant control, that to survive forever was to win. But the humans he despised drew strength from impermanence, from fleeting bonds that gave each breath meaning. The sun he fled from was not his enemy, but the symbol of everything he lacked: warmth, renewal, and the courage to end. When his body began to break apart under that light, he raged not at his enemies, but at the universe itself for daring to move on without him. Even as he dissolved into dust, Muzan's pride clung stubbornly to the air, seeking some vessel to carry him forward. In Tanjiro, he saw a chance to continue, to twist innocence into his next form. But even that hope was denied him. Compassion, again, proved stronger than cruelty. The line that separated man and monster held firm. When the last of Muzan's ashes drifted away, dawn returned. The light touched every corner he had once darkened, and the world exhaled. The silence he left behind was heavy but cleansing, the kind of quiet that comes after a long storm. And perhaps, somewhere in the unseen, what was left of him finally understood that the eternity he sought had never been in life without end, but in the moments he had spent trying to erase. In the endless night that stretches across Demon Slayer's world, there are stars that burn with malice instead of light, the 12 Kizuki, or the 12 demon moons. They are Muzan's chosen, the ones who have tasted more of his blood than any others, their strength sharpened and reshaped until they are nearly divine in their cruelty. 6 above and 6 below, they form a cruel hierarchy, their eyes marked with numbers that shimmer like scars of loyalty. The lower moons tremble beneath fear of their master, while the upper moons live in a strange kind of reverence, both cursed and exalted by his favor. Together, they are the circle of shadows that guard Muzan's throne, the constellation of his power. Each of them once bore a human name, a life with simple worries, family, hunger, loneliness, love, but all of those names were swallowed by the dark. What remains are creatures of obsession, fragments of who they once were stretched beyond recognition. The 12 moons are not merely soldiers. They are reflections of Muzan's own hunger, each one embodying an aspect of him that he could not contain. In them, the human and the monstrous blur completely, until one cannot tell whether their strength came from what they gained or from what they lost. The lower moons are the first to fall, their loyalty fragile, their terror endless. They serve more as warning than warriors, reminders of what happens when Muzan's patience fades. When he calls them to his lair, the air thick with silence, their trembling voices fill the hall. He kills most of them without a flicker of emotion, not because they failed in battle, but because they feared too loudly. The lower moons live in perpetual twilight, caught between the gift of power and the curse of proximity. Of the 6, only one remains long enough to make an impression: Enmu, the demon of dreams. Enmu's power is as beautiful as it is cruel. He slips into the minds of his victims, crafting dreams so vivid they forget the waking world. He offers comfort before consumption, showing people the lives they wish they had: a warm home, laughter, peace, before shattering it with the sound of a train whistle. On the Mugen train, he fuses his body with the metal of the locomotive, turning the entire machine into a moving trap, a serpent of steel and flesh winding through the darkness. When Tanjiro and his allies confront him, they see not just a demon, but a man who once longed to be praised, who craved acknowledgement so deeply that even death could not cure his hunger for approval. His fall marks the end of the lower moons, and with it, Muzan's disdain for weakness. Above them stand the upper moons, the 6 pillars of Muzan's power, each one a force so terrible that even the Hashira whisper their names with caution. For over 100 years, none of the upper moons have been slain, their strength immortalized in the core's history as unbroken nightmares. They do not fear Muzan. They worship him, each in their own twisted way. The lowest among them, Daki and Gyutaro, are two halves of a single suffering. Their bond is their strength, a shared curse of love and resentment, born in the filth of the entertainment district, mocked and starved. They learned early that beauty and ugliness are only masks the world chooses to wear. Muzan's blood turned them into predators, but it could not erase the years they spent clinging to each other for warmth. Daki's vanity and Gyutaro's envy twined together like their attacks' ribbons and sickles, beauty and venom. Even in death, when fire consumes them, their final words are of each other. They go to hell side by side, hand in hand, their laughter broken but real. Above them stands Akaza, the demon who fights for strength as if it were salvation. He detests weakness, but what he despises most is his own humanity. In every duel, in every strike, he seeks a moment pure enough to silence the ghost of the boy he once was. When he meets Kyojuro Rengoku beneath the blazing sky, their clash becomes a hymn flame against frozen moonlight, conviction against fury. Even as he kills Rengoku, Akaza cannot escape admiration. The memory of that man, smiling through his wounds, remains lodged in his mind like a thorn. For the first time in centuries, Akaza hesitates. That hesitation will one day undo him when memory finally outweighs pride. Next, there is Doma, radiant, charming, and hollow. He smiles with the warmth of a festival lantern, but behind his eyes there is only a void. Doma's strength lies not just in his ice techniques, but in his absolute lack of empathy. He kills without joy or sorrow, seeing humans as delicate decorations rather than lives. His temple was filled with worshippers even before he became a demon, people drawn to his beauty, unaware that they were feeding a god who could not feel. Yet, even he finds himself unsettled by the rare presence of someone like Shinobu Kocho, a woman whose hatred burns cold enough to match his chill. When he devours her, thinking it another routine meal, he unwittingly swallows his own death. Her poison spreads quietly through his veins, turning his victory into ruin. In her final act, she transforms her death into justice, her body becoming a weapon more perfect than any sword. Then comes Kokushibo, the first among the upper moons, and Muzan's masterpiece of pride. Once known as Michikatsu Sugikuni, he was the brother of Yoriichi, the greatest demon slayer who ever lived. Jealousy was his undoing. No matter how hard he trained, no matter how many lifetimes he devoted to mastery, he could never surpass his brother's grace. When Muzan offered him immortality, he accepted, not for power, but to escape the humiliation of mortality itself. Yet immortality only deepened the wound. His body became monstrous, his sword an extension of his own flesh, eyes blooming across his skin in grotesque imitation of the clarity he once sought. In every battle, he hears Yoriichi's name echoing through time, reminding him that no amount of life can replace a lost soul. When he finally meets his end, he weeps not for his death, but for the centuries he wasted trying to outlive his own envy. Between these titans, the hierarchy of darkness remains constant for generations. No human slayer can erase the marks they leave on history. The upper moons are not simply powerful, they are inevitable, the embodiment of everything Muzan's blood can create and destroy. Their deaths, when they finally come, shake the balance of the world itself. Each one falls differently, some screaming, some laughing, some smiling as if waking from a dream. And in each of those moments something extraordinary happens. They remember, The memory of who they were before the blood took hold returns like dawn seeping through cracks in a cave. Doma remembers the first time he was told he was perfect, and the emptiness that followed. Akaza recalls the warmth of the girl who believed in him. Kokushibo, in his last seconds, sees his brother's face and realizes that the gap between them was never hate, but love unspoken. Even Daki and Gyutaro, sinking into fire, find peace in the simple act of not being alone. The moons fade, one by one, until the sky of Muzan's empire grows bare. Where once his 12 stars burned with hunger, now only dust remains. Yet their echoes linger, stories of pride, grief, and longing that stretch across lifetimes. The 12 Kizuki were never truly a family, but in their end, they share the same truth that even in darkness, memory endures, and that the greatest curse is not death, but the inability to forgive oneself. As the last of them disappears, the world grows quieter. The demon's empire begins to tremble, and somewhere far above, the sun prepares to rise again. Long before the Demon Slayer Corps bore its current name, there were only blades, breath, and will. The art of breathing styles was born not from magic, but from the discipline of humanity itself, from the realization that air, when shaped with purpose, could carry the rhythm of life and sharpen it into strength. Each slayer who drew their sword sought a way to make their body an instrument, to align heartbeat, muscle, and motion into a single, unbroken flow. It was through this harmony that humans learned to stand against the unnatural power of demons, and through it, they found a way to meet death with grace. The first breath ever taken in combat belonged to a man who would never be forgotten, Yoriichi Sugikuni. His movements were so fluid that the world itself seemed to slow around him. When he inhaled, it was as though the wind bent toward his lungs. When he exhaled, the air shimmered, carrying with it the faint echo of firelight. His sun-breathing was not invented, but remembered a primal rhythm that already existed in the heartbeat of creation. Every style that followed was a branch from that single root, an imitation of the warmth that gives life to all things. Those who came after Yoriichi could not replicate his perfection, but they carried his legacy in fragments, each discovering their own interpretation of that original flame. Water breathing, the first of the derivatives, flowed from those who sought calm and continuity. It teaches that victory lies in adaptation, in responding to danger, the way a river answers stone, not by resisting, but by reshaping. Its forms move in circles and arcs, blades tracing lines that never truly end. To watch a master of water-breathing fight is to see serenity made visible, every slash a ripple that fades as another begins. Then came the heat of flame-breathing, a sibling to the sun's original fire, taught to those whose hearts burn too brightly to stay still. Where water seeks harmony, flame seeks justice. The swordsmen who learn it move with the courage of burning wood, their blades singing with resolve. Each form is a declaration, unhesitating, unwavering, as if the act of fighting itself were an offering to the light. Kyojuro Rengoku embodied this perfectly. His strikes roared, his eyes shone, and even in death his flame continued to flicker in those he inspired. Wind breathing took another path entirely. It honors the invisible, the unseen currents that shape the world without ever being held. Wind-breathing masters are unpredictable, shifting from stillness to violence in an instant. Their swords crack the air, cutting faster than the eye can follow, yet they never forget that the wind must always move forward. Sanemi Shinazugawa, fierce and relentless, channels his own scars into this movement. The wind through his blade carries all his pain and transforms it into something cleansing, something free. Stone breathing is the opposite, steady, grounded, immovable. Its practitioners root themselves to the earth before each strike, drawing stability from stillness. The rhythm of stone is not about speed or grace, but about connection. To move as stone is to bear the weight of the world without bending. Gyome Himejima's strength comes not from muscle alone, but from prayer. Each breath a mantra, each swing of his massive weapon a hymn. His presence in battle feels less like war and more like ritual, an unbroken act of devotion. Thunder breathing crackles between these extremes, born of motion so fast it becomes sound. Its wielders strike like lightning, arriving before the echo of their steps. The technique requires both courage and surrender, courage to leap, surrender to the air that carries you. Zenitsu Agatsuma, though filled with fear, became the embodiment of that paradox. His fear sharpened his senses, his trembling became vibration, and vibration became speed. When he moves, he does not think, he becomes the strike itself. Thunder breathing reminds us that even fear, when faced, can be transformed into brilliance. Beast breathing, developed by Inosuke Hashibira, is wild and unrefined but profoundly alive. It comes not from instruction but instinct. Raised by nature, Inosuke found his rhythm in the chaos of survival. His style imitates animals, twisting, crawling, lunging, always improvising. Each breath is a challenge to the idea that only structure can create strength. Where others see disorder, he finds freedom. The sharpness of his dual blades mirrors the twin heartbeats of someone who refuses to be tamed. Love breathing, developed later by Mitsuri Kanroji, carries an entirely different energy. Its forms are elastic, flowing, and graceful, reflecting the joy of emotion itself. Love breathing teaches that power does not have to come from anger or control. It can come from adoration, from the celebration of connection. Each swing of Mitsuri's whip-like sword moves with affection, her strength drawn from gratitude rather than grief. She turns compassion into velocity and beauty into armor. Serpent breathing, her counterpart, coils around precision and tension. Obanai Iguro's movements mimic the motion of a snake through grass, subtle, measured, lethal. Where love breathing blooms outward, serpent breathing narrows inward, concentrating all energy into a single, inevitable cut. Together, their styles show that power takes many shapes, one expanding, one constricting, both necessary in the balance between life and death. Sound breathing transforms combat into composition. Tengen Uzui's blades move in patterns that mirror percussion, explosions timed like rhythm, attacks landing on beat. He analyzes battle the way a musician reads a score, predicting chaos through sound. His flamboyance hides calculation, his artistry conceals strategy. To fight with sound breathing is to dance with danger, trusting that music, even when loud and unpredictable, will always lead you home. Mist breathing is born from uncertainty, an art of vanishing and reappearing. Muichiro Tokito's style embodies memory itself, elusive, delicate, half-forgotten. His blade moves through openings invisible to the eye, turning confusion into advantage. Mist breathing teaches that absence can be as powerful as presence, that to disappear is sometimes the surest path to survival. Insect breathing belongs to Shinobu Kocho, whose small frame hides lethal precision. Her style forgoes brute strength entirely, replacing it with elegance and intellect. Each motion is delicate, each strike laced with poison. She moves as if dancing through moonlight, her sword slicing air rather than flesh, delivering death through grace. Her breathing is measured, quiet, the sound of control disguised as serenity. Every breathing style has its own rhythm, yet they all share the same heartbeat. The breath itself is a bridge between fear and courage, between the human and the divine. Inhale, take in the world as it is. Exhale, shape it into what you must become. To master breathing is to master existence, to turn life into weapon and weapon into life. For the Slayers, these techniques are more than combat forms. They are expressions of who they are, their memories, their beliefs, their pain. A Slayer's breathing is their identity written in motion. It carries their promise to the fallen, their gratitude for the living, and their yearning to see the sun rise again. The discipline binds them to one another, even across generations. When the moon is high and the air still, one can almost hear it, the faint sound of synchronized breaths across the battlefield, hundreds of hearts moving to the same quiet rhythm. Together, they form a single tide rising against the dark. The blades flash, the air hums, and the demons pause for just a moment before they fall. And when the dust settles, the Slayers kneel, catching their breath, the same breath that once belonged to Yoriichi, passed down through centuries like a whisper. It is the simplest act in the world and the most sacred, to breathe, to live, and to keep the rhythm of hope alive. When the world of demon slayers slows to stillness, when the battles pause and the blood on the blades begins to dry, what remains is not the clash of swords, but the pulse of human hearts, fragile, persistent, endlessly reaching for one another even in the dark. Beneath every fight lies a story of love, of loss, and of the quiet redemption that weaves them together. The demons and the Slayers share the same truth. No one escapes the pull of connection, even when it hurts. For Tanjiro, love begins in the warmth of a family that the world took from him too soon. Every step he takes through snow and ash is guided by that memory. His mother's gentle voice, his siblings' laughter, the soft scent of firewood and food cooking on a winter morning. That love does not fade with their deaths. It deepens, becoming a current that carries him forward. When he looks at Nezuko, he does not see a demon to be cured, but a sister still waiting to be held. His journey is not vengeance, it is devotion stretched across a lifetime, a promise to protect what little light remains. Nezuko's love is quieter but no less powerful. Bound by a curse she did not choose, she fights her hunger with the strength of memory. Every time her fangs bare or her eyes burn red, she remembers Tanjiro's voice calling her name, steady and certain. She sleeps through long stretches of time, wrapped in her box like a chrysalis, and each awakening feels like a small resurrection. Her silence is not emptiness, it is control, the soft resistance of someone choosing gentleness when violence would be easier. Through her, the story shows that love is not always loud. Sometimes it is the act of staying, of refusing to let darkness dictate who you are. Among the Hashira, love takes many forms, shaped by loss and the fragile hope that follows. Mitsuri Kanroji's love is her power, not her weakness. She feels deeply and openly, every heartbeat overflowing with affection for life itself. Where others see the battlefield, she sees beauty even in danger, even in pain. Her love is expansive, touching everyone she meets, even those who cannot understand it. It is this openness that makes her strong. It transforms vulnerability into light. When she fights, she moves as though embracing the world rather than striking it. Her softness is her sword, and it cuts deeper than steel. For Obanai Iguro, love is something harder, a truth he hides behind ritual and restraint. His life has been a pattern of order against chaos, of control against fear. Yet in Mitsuri's presence, his careful balance trembles. He loves her, not because she saves him from his solitude, but because she makes it bearable. Around her, his silence feels less like isolation and more like peace. His devotion is unspoken, written instead in small gestures, the sweets he brings, the protection he offers, the promise that, if the world ends, they will face it together. In the end, they do, and in that shared final breath, love becomes something eternal, blooming quietly even as the light fades. Shinobu Kocho's love is built from ashes. Her sister's death carved a hollow space inside her, one she filled with purpose, so she would not drown in grief. She smiles often, speaks softly, but her kindness is edged with steel. Every demon she faces carries the ghost of the one who took her sister's life, yet she does not allow hatred to consume her entirely. Instead, she channels it into her work, the poisons she crafts, the cures she studies, the lives she saves. Her love is disciplined, scientific, precise. When she sacrifices herself to defeat Doma, it is not out of vengeance but out of devotion, a final act of trust in her comrades, proof that even bitterness can give way to grace. Zenitsu's love grows from fear, fear of failure, of loneliness, of dying without purpose. Yet, beneath that trembling heart lies something tender and steadfast. His affection for Nezuko is innocent and persistent, a light that keeps him moving forward when he wants to run away. What begins as infatuation deepens into admiration, then into courage. Zenitsu learns that love is not about possession or perfection, but about staying even when you are terrified, even when you feel unworthy. His growth is proof that gentleness, too, can be heroic. Inosuke's love is wild and confused, born from a life without language for tenderness, raised among beasts. He first understood strength as dominance and survival as solitude. But traveling beside Tanjiro and Zenitsu, he begins to see another form of strength, the kind that listens, that protects, that shares food and laughter around a campfire. He does not know how to name these feelings, but they change him all the same. His shouting softens, his arrogance folds into care, and one day, without realizing it, he starts to smile without a fight. Inosuke's redemption is quiet. He learns that love does not weaken him. It roots him. Even the demons, twisted and lost, are driven by love distorted. Rui built his false family out of fear of being alone. Akaza's rage is a corrupted yearning to protect what he once cherished. Daki and Gyutaro's cruelty is a mirror of their shared suffering. They loved each other too fiercely to let go, even when love turned poisonous. These are not excuses for their actions, but reminders of the thread that ties all beings together. Love, when broken or starved, becomes hunger. When nurtured, it becomes healing. Tanjiro's compassion bridges these worlds. He fights demons not to punish them but to release them. Each time his sword falls, it carries not just strength, but sorrow. His empathy becomes a kind of redemption that neither side can destroy. Through him, the story whispers that forgiveness is not forgetting, it is remembering with understanding. When the war against Muzan reaches its end, love remains the only thing that does not crumble. Friends fall, heroes die, and the dawn feels almost too heavy to bear, yet in that pale light, the survivors find one another. They laugh through their tears, cook together again, rebuild the homes that were lost. The breath they take after the final battle feels new, fragile, and beautiful. It is the breath of those who loved so fiercely that even death could not silence them. Redemption, in this world, is not grand or miraculous. It is the small act of returning, of choosing kindness after cruelty, peace after violence, trust after betrayal. It is Tanjiro forgiving himself for surviving. It is Nezuko stepping into sunlight for the first time, her skin warm and unburned. It is the ghosts of the fallen resting finally in quiet, their burdens eased by the memories they left behind. Love and loss are not opposites here. They are two sides of the same endless thread, weaving together every breath, every strike, every prayer. The Slayers fight not only to destroy demons, but to protect the space where love can exist, in laughter, in memory, in the hush that follows pain. And in that purpose, they find redemption not just for the world, but for themselves. As night falls again, long after the battles have ended, one can almost imagine their voices carried on the wind, gentle, steady, unbroken, a promise that even in darkness, love endures, and the hearts that were once divided will someday find their way back to the same quiet light. The battle is over. The long night that began with blood and sorrow has finally given way to morning. The sun rises, golden and calm, washing the world in warmth that feels almost foreign after so much shadow. For the first time in generations, the Demon Slayer Corps has no orders to follow, no monsters to chase through the dark. The blades rest. The air smells of soil and dew, not ash. What remains now is silence, a gentle, healing quiet that feels like the answer to every prayer whispered by those who fought and fell beneath the moon. Tanjiro wakes beneath that light, his breath slow and steady, his body covered in scars that no longer ache. Around him, friends gather in disbelief, laughter breaking through tears as they see Nezuko standing in the sun beside him. Her skin glows with warmth, her eyes filled with human light again. The curse that held her has faded, leaving only peace in its place. The siblings, who began their journey through snow and grief, now stand beneath the spring sky together, alive, whole, and free. The war took much from them: homes, teachers, comrades, and the innocence that once made their world simple. But what it gave back cannot be measured: a world reborn, a lineage of courage that will echo through generations. The names of the fallen live on in quiet ways, the rustle of wind through the trees planted where they died, the laughter of children named after them, the blades preserved in shrines as symbols of hope. No statue could ever hold the depth of their sacrifice, yet their presence lingers in every dawn that follows night. The surviving Hashira walk new paths. Giyu Tomioka, the stoic water pillar, finds solace in simplicity, tending streams, repairing bridges, teaching the next generation how to breathe with patience rather than fear. His silence becomes less a barrier and more a language, one that speaks of gratitude instead of grief. Sanemi Shinazugawa, scarred and unyielding, learns to let the wind move through him without resistance. The rage that once defined him softens into something steadier, quieter. He carries flowers to the graves of his family, not as apology, but as promise. Each petal that drifts away on the breeze feels like a piece of the pain leaving with it. Gyomei Himajima's prayers continue long after the Corps disbands. He rebuilds temples, raises orphaned children, and teaches them the strength of stillness. His beads click softly in the morning light, marking time not as countdown, but as blessing. For him, peace is not the absence of struggle, but the transformation of it into compassion. The memories of Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Obanai linger most vividly in the hearts of those who remain. Their stories are told like lullabies of love that defied cruelty, of laughter that outlasted despair, of vows kept even in death. In the spring festivals that return to towns once haunted by demons, people release lanterns into the night sky. Some say they see 3 of them rise together, drifting side by side until they vanish into starlight. Zenitsu and Inosuke, restless and alive, find their own rhythms in this new world. Zenitsu writes down his memories exaggerated, dramatic, full of affection, insisting that someone must remember how terrifying and beautiful it all was. Inosuke wanders the forests, guiding travelers away from danger, laughing louder than he ever has. He never stops challenging Tanjiro to races, even though he never quite wins. For them, peace does not mean stillness. It means freedom to move, to live without fear. And Tanjiro, ever gentle, spends his days teaching children how to listen to the wind and how to honor those who came before. He does not speak often of the demons or the war. Instead, he tells them about kindness, about how courage can grow quietly in the heart, about how every breath is sacred because it connects them to everyone who has ever lived. When he looks at Nezuko, he smiles with the deep, quiet joy of someone who has finally found home. Generations pass. The era of swords and breathing techniques fades into history, replaced by cities, trains, and soft electric light. Yet the spirit of those who fought continues, invisible but unforgotten. The descendants of the slayers live ordinary lives, studying, laughing, arguing over small things, unaware of how much they owe to the blood that was spilled for their peace. In museums, the blades gleam behind glass. In books, their names appear like whispers. But sometimes, when a breeze moves through the cherry blossoms, or when dawn glows a little brighter than usual, it feels as though the world itself remembers. The final legacy of the Demon Slayer Corps is not the death of demons, but the survival of gentleness. In a world that once demanded strength above all, they proved that empathy could be a weapon and love could be armor. Their story ends not with victory, but with quiet continuity, the soft rhythm of life returning to its natural pace. As the sun rises higher, the fields glisten with morning mist. Somewhere in that golden light, echoes of the past walk beside the living Rengoku's laughter carried on the wind, Shinobu's calm voice in the rustle of leaves, Mitsuri's joy woven into the scent of spring. The world turns, as it always has, but for the first time in centuries, it turns without fear. And so, the tale that began in sorrow closes in peace. The breath that once gave strength to slayers now fills the lungs of children playing in the sunlight. The blades that once defended humanity now rest beneath wild flowers. The night has kept its promise, and the morning has returned. If you listen carefully, perhaps just before sleep, you can still hear it. The echo of steel meeting silence, the sound of a single steady breath, the world exhaling after the longest of nights. Rest now, traveler. The demons are gone. The light has come home. Sleep well, and let the dawn hold you gently.